Hey guys, welcome back to a new episode of Dev Drawer. Today we're going to be expanding upon the API that we had created last time. Just to kind of recap what I did last time was essentially we created this API to create pages, update pages, and delete pages for our sample website that's using SammyJS to populate the content here, pulled from a database. So essentially it's using Ajax to go out and grab information from these APIs, and then it's pulling it over to display the content here. So currently we only have it where it'll use the read and the single. So it'll read all of the pages to grab the navigation at the top over here, and then it'll use a single to display the content for each page. So last time we built these create, update, and delete functions inside of our API, and we were able to test them with Postman, and then we were also able to build this interface using Swagger. So what I want to do today is expand upon this a little bit, and I don't know if you remember from one of the previous videos that we did where this is being created automatically because it's reading from the database. However, in our file system over here we have these templates, and whenever we create a new page in the database using the API, we have to go in there and create a template to match it. So what I want to do today is make it where whenever you create something using the API, it actually goes in here and creates this template for you, which is a very simple template. There's not that much that's going on here. It's just a page, the content. It replaces the H1 with whatever's inside of the database, and then grabs the script for this, which automatically comes in here to the get pages script and essentially just reaches out to this pages folder to grab the template. So that's essentially what we're going to be doing today, is kind of taking some of the functionality that we did with the create and the delete in our API and making it where the PHP code would go in there and create these templates for us. So it becomes more of a, I guess more of like a CRUD system. It's still not 100% a CRUD because there's not really a front-end interface for this. We're still going to be using this interface in order to create this code. But before we get started, if you haven't liked the channel yet, or if you haven't subscribed to the channel, there's plenty of videos out there that I do that are just like this. So if you have an interest in this type of thing, definitely subscribe. If you like this video, like it, comment on it. I've been getting a lot more comments and likes lately, and it's very much appreciated. So if you're interested in this kind of thing, I have all kinds of tutorials that I've been doing. I think I got about 30 or 35 of them so far. And just some news coming up, I'm actually going to be doing a 2-hour-long tutorial video with Freed Code Camp on YouTube. So that's a pretty big thing for me, so be looking out for that on Free Code Camp, where Dev Drawer is actually going to be focused on building a WordPress website and building out a WordPress template from scratch, and even going all the way out to how to publish it within like one video. So be looking out for that in the next few weeks, but for now, let's go ahead and get started on building this. So if you look in the PHP that we've created for our API, you can see that we have our read function, our single function, create function, update function, and delete function. What I want to do here is make it where whenever you create a new page, I want it to pass the slug that's being created, so it'll go in here and create this template. So in order to do that, one of the first things that we need to do is create a new function within inside of this class. So let's go down to the bottom, and we don't have to do anything with Swagger for this, just because it's a function that's going to be used within the API. It's not really a function you can call outside of this specific call to the create function inside of the API. So we don't have to create any documentation for it. So let's go ahead and create our function, and let's call it create page HTML, and then we're going to be passing a slug and a title because both of those are required whenever you create that template. Alright, so now we know what we want to hit, but there's a few things I'm going to turn off temporarily in order for us to see how it works inside of this create function here, because right now if we run it, it'll actually create the page in the database, but it won't create it on the front end. So I don't want to run the function yet. So we're going to come back up here to our create function. Where's it at? Here. And let's just go ahead and comment out this code for now, and then we'll turn it back on whenever we get done testing our functions. So we are grabbing the slug here and the title here. So what we're going to do is be passing that slug and that title to that function that we just created. So let's come down here and say this, what was it, create page HTML, and then we're going to be passing in this slug, and then we're also going to be passing in this title. So that'll give us the two variables that we need to pass in, and with everything else being disabled, it's essentially just going to run this and then it's going to display something. So I want to make sure that it's grabbing the correct slug and the correct title whenever it's created. So I'm going to go over, let me take away this for now, and we're going to go to the create page, and again I'm just going to disable the return because I'm not looking for this return right now. We'll get to that whenever we actually get it pushed out, but what I want to do is just make sure that it's grabbing the correct information whenever we go to submit it. So we're going to do echo JSON encode, and then let's say we're going to pass the title. Now let's pass the slug first because that's where the actual file is going to be created. So now if we come back over here, and I don't think we have to refresh it, but let's go ahead and try it out, and we're going to change this to test. We're going to make it say that it's a test page, and then let's give it an order ID of something like 10 because I know we haven't hit that many pages yet. So if we hit execute on it right now, it's oh, that's because we don't have a return true or return false on it right now. So let's go over here and just after it happens, let's just say return true, so we can actually see that response. There we go. Alright, so now we can see that it's grabbing the slug. So let's come in down here and also make sure that it's grabbing the title. And if it is, then we can move with the actual PHP code to create those pages. So alright, so it's grabbing our title and it's grabbing our slug. So that's exactly what we need. So inside of this, we're going to essentially use this function to get out of the folder that's the API. It's going to come down to this pages folder, and then it's going to create the template file, and then within that template file it's going to add the content, which is going to be reflective of this. So let's come in here, and I got that. Let's see, let's go to our create page again, and I always use this. Now you may have issues with this code if you're not running it on the same server. Currently the API and the file system itself is being run on the same server. If you have it split up, you may have to create another AJAX call that goes in there and call something here. But for now, just to keep it kind of simple, we're going to keep our API and our application on the same file structure so that we can just use this in order to go back to that server, the document root, which would be just our live folder, and then we're going to pass the variable. So we're going to do pages because that's the folder that we wanted to go into, and then we're going to kind of style it the same way we have here. So this is the slug.template. So we're going to pass in the slug, and then we're going to pass template. That way it's going to create that slug template. Now we need to create a variable that we can pass, so we're just going to call it file and then have it equal out to that. So we can go ahead and get rid of this part because we do not need this, and then we need to pass the content of the file, because if we just create it the way it is right now, it's essentially just going to create a blank template. So I'm going to use this about template as like a structure, because I think all of the pages they're kind of the same. The only thing that really changes is the slug is passed here, which tells it which JavaScript to run. So let's create another variable called content, and I'm just going to paste in what I got from the about page, and then we're just going to change a few variables in it. So right here, obviously we need to make it where we can actually pass the single quotes, because that is part of the script that's on that page, so we need to keep that there. But we also need to pass in our slug variable. So we got our file, we got the content that we want it to say, which is again very simplistic. You can change this however you want it to be, but for our purposes this is going to do exactly what it needs to do. And then finally the last part of this would be file put contents, and then we're going to be passing in that file variable that we created, and then we're going to be passing in the content variable that we created. So essentially it's going to use a PHP function, file put contents, and it's going to create the file, and then it's going to pass in the content that we created here. Now I'm wondering why this is red. I don't think that that's an issue. I think that it's just telling me something. I have no idea what that something is. It might be because the slashes and the single quotes, but I don't think that's going to affect anything. But let me just check it real quick. I think that's yep, that's good. Alright, so now what I want to do is turn back on the create functionality. We're still going to use the create functionality the way that we did before. So what we're going to do is right here is if it creates it inside the database, it's going to return true. So we want to take what we created here and we're going to cut it from there, and we're going to paste it in here because it's still going to use that return true, but it's also going to run this function prior to it doing it. And then we can go back to our create, and let's go ahead and uncomment this part out and save. And now if we run our API again, it should tell us we got a success. And if we switch over here, we see now that we have a test page, and over here we see that we have a test.template. So if we click on test page, we actually have the test page title as well as the HTML only that we added in here. But we can also switch over to our database, do a refresh, so we got everything added here, and essentially it works. So that's exactly what I was hoping it would do. So yay, no issue so far. But we got all of these pages now, and this is being loaded in real time. So if we wanted to come over here and add another page, we can change this to, let's say, test 2, and then test 2 page, and then let's even go in there and change this to this is a second test page, and let's change the order ID to 11, and then we execute it. And now if we go back to our site, we have test page 2, we click on it, and test page 2 is there with this is a second test page. So right now we're using our API to create a page in the database, but we're also using it to create that template that we need down here. As you can see here, test and test 2 template. So now that that part's done, we're going to do the kind of sort of the same thing that we did there, but we're going to do it in the delete. So let's go back to our pages and go down to the bottom, and we're going to create another function, and we're going to create function delete page HTML, and what are we going to pass here? So in order for the delete functionality to run in the API, it needs to pass a ID. So currently we're getting we're not gathering that ID, so we need to pass the ID here, but we also need to pass a slug, because that slug is what is named here. It's not ID 10 or 11 or whichever one was just created .template. It's actually the slug of that page. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and we're going to pass the variable called slug, and then we're going to come back to this. So let's get out of this, and let's get out of this because those are no longer needed. So we're going to open up the delete.php, and then inside of our delete we're going to do the same thing that we did previously. We're just going to test it for right now. So we don't want it to return any kind of response code. We actually want it to show us the ID or the slug that's being deleted. So let's go back up here, and I'm going to go ahead and just copy this function because we're going to need it. So we have our delete here, and let's go ahead and comment this out because we don't want to delete the page yet. We just want to make sure that it's grabbing the correct information. So we have our delete page here. And then, so let's say instead of doing the slug right now, let's do the ID, because that's what we're gathering. So if we do the ID, and then again we're gonna have to do return true just so it doesn't error out and think that there's something wrong. We're gonna do here, let's do echo JSON encode, and then we're just going to pass that ID. So right now we see up here that we are getting the ID when we go to do delete. So we're going to take this and do this ID, and now if we run this, it should give us the ID of the page we're trying to delete. So let's go to our database and see. Let's refresh this, and we got currently an ID of 8. So if we type in, try it out, ID of 8, and then execute that code, it's going to not do what we want it to do. Call to undefined function. Oh, okay. That's because I got to run, it's included in the class, so it's got to be this, the function. There we go. Alright, so it's passing along the ID of 8. But again, we can't use the ID to delete the template. So we have to go in there and grab that slug, which means that inside of this statement, we need to do a select statement first. So let's come up here to our delete, and we're going to create another query, and it's going to be equal to select slug from, and then I can just copy this and this. So let's take this and paste it in. So now we're selecting the slug from the database table where the ID equals the ID. And okay, so now we got to process the statement. So let's do statement equals this. We got to pass over the connection and then do our prepare, and then we got to pass the query that we created above. And then finally we got to bind the parameters. So statement equals, nope, statement bind param, and then we're going to do the same thing. Actually, you know what, let's just go ahead and copy this because it's the exact same that we're doing up there. Okay, and then we're going to execute that statement. So statement execute. So now what's going to be different is we don't want it to delete the page if the slug doesn't exist. So essentially we're going to take it where it doesn't do this if it doesn't exist. So let's come in here and say if statement row count, and if it does have a row count, we're going to run it. Else we're going to return false, and then we're going to end our if. So now we need to take this and we're going to paste it inside of this. Now again, this is just testing it out. We're actually going to use this functionality and essentially paste it here, but for right now we're still just trying to make sure that it's grabbing the right information. Okay, so now that we have our row count, we're going to run our while statement. So while row equals statement, and then we're going to use the fetch. And if you don't know how to do this part, if you look at the top where it's like the single statement, you can kind of see how I did it. Well, it was actually be inside of the single.php. So essentially I'm just taking this where it's grabbing all of the information and I'm just putting it inside of this call down here by itself. So if you don't know how to do the fetch PDO, there's a lot of tutorials out there for it, or you can look at how we did it in our previous tutorial. So let's just go ahead and pass PDO fetch assoc, and then we're going to close our while statement, and then finally we're going to pass or create this variable called slug, and it's going to be equal to row slug because that's what we're pulling from up here, and close that off. So now we should be able to pass slug to this delete page HTML and be able to run our API again and see that it's now passing the slug value of test rather than the ID of 8 or whichever one it was. So let's pass slug, and then let's just go ahead and change this to make it more concise. So we're going to be passing slug, and then we're going to encode that slug. So now if we go back over here and we hit execute again, it's giving us test. If we change this ID to 9, it should be test 2. Test 2. So good, it's working. This usually it's not this smooth. I usually have a few issues I have to deal with, but this is actually working out pretty good. Okay, so now we have our we know that it's grabbing the slug that we want, so we need to run the PHP function in order to unlink that file. So let's go ahead and delete that, and we're going to create a variable called file again, and essentially let's just copy this over because it's the same thing. So we got our document root, pages, slug, template, and we're passing that slug now, and then we're just going to do unlink file. So in theory that should work. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is come back up here and make it where it actually does the delete functionality like it's supposed to. So we can take this entire statement, and after the end while, we're going to call the delete page because it needs to delete the template prior to deleting from the database. So we're going to delete the page, and then we're going to paste our query into that. So let me do, there we go. And we can get rid of this return true because it is not needed anymore either, because it's going to be calling it here and then basically just going through the delete functionality that we already had there, and then it's going to return true or false on whether or not it can delete it. So inside this function, it's going to select to see if the row exists inside the database. If it does, then we're going to grab the slug from it, delete the page, and then delete the database record. And then if it fails, it's going to return false for all of it. If it doesn't fail, it's going to return true. So if we go back to our delete, let's just uncomment this out, and we should be able to run that and see that it deletes it from here in real time, as well as on the website in real time. So let's delete the last one first. So we're going to delete ID 9, and we're going to hit execute. It says it was successfully deleted. It deleted the file here, and if we go back to our site, the test page 2 is now gone. Alright, so let's come in here and delete 8. Execute it. The test template is gone, and now that page is gone. So now if we try to access test, brings up nothing because the page doesn't exist. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to show today. So basically just taking what we've done on the previous tutorials and expanding upon it a little bit to make it where it's you don't have to go back and forth in order to create the page template and then create the page inside the database. Essentially what this thing does is it just goes in there and does it all for you. So you can actually take this and expand upon it and make it into like a full CRUD system. I might be able to do that in a future tutorial where we take our API and turn it into our CRUD application that then runs the front end of the application. But for now, you can use the API functionality, and you can run all of this stuff inside of Postman, or you can use the Swagger template files that we've created. You can run it from here. But for right now, I think that is all that I wanted to show you for this tutorial. Again, be on the lookout for something from DevDrawer on Free Code Camp in the next few weeks. It's going to be a great tutorial. I'm essentially going to show you how to build a law firm website from the design phase all the way to the production phase. I've been spending a lot of time on it. I'm only about halfway done with it right now. But it's going to be roughly a 2-hour-long video, and it's going to be very detailed of how to install WordPress, how to set up Elementor, how to create your own custom theme that Elementor then uses, and then push it out to a production server whenever you get done with it. I'm actually going to use the DevDrawer production server, just create a little demo subdomain to push it out there so you can see how to create everything inside of the cPanel. So it's going to be a very, very involved tutorial, and it's on Free Code Camp, so check them out if you're interested in this kind of thing. They have a lot of other creators like myself that pushes things out on their channel. But for right now, I think I'm going to go ahead and end it here. If you like the video, smash the like button for me. If you have not subscribed, which I would say that 50-60% of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. Please subscribe to the channel. It gives me the incentive that I need to keep going and keep building these things. But I think for right now I am done, and I appreciate you watching, and I will talk to you later.